because the email invite said, have a fun background. And Carolyn has her gorgeous yard, and everybody else has like houses and things. And I did fun, but I'm the only one on a spaceship.
You're the only one who reads.
I didn't see that. I would have done fun too.
This brings up the envy question. Where did you find that?
I just Google searched background images and stole it from the internet.
Which fleet uniform should you be wearing on that starship?
You know, it's funny. I actually have a dress that coincidentally looks like a Star Trek uniform, where it's got a big color block on the top and then the rest of it is black, and it happens to be burgundy, so it's apparently the engineering color.
Okay. So you'd be a red
shirt with my own.
Yeah.
Okay.
You don't want to be a red shirt on Star Trek, at least not the digital.
You just don't want to be the away ensign who never comes back.
Don't be wearing red.
You don't want to be wearing red, exactly.
Oh, no, they never get to kiss the aliens and they don't return.
Okay, I'm ready. Sarah.
Go for it.
I'm Carrie Vanston, and I am the Ambassador's Officer for Association of Corporate Growth and direct the CEASAR Roundtable and Mastermind. The CEASAR is Corporate Executives of Austin San Antonio Roundtable. We have CEOs, business owners, and C-suiters that we gather together on the first Tuesday of each month for a roundtable with a speaker and discussion and intros. And then the third week, we have a mastermind for people that want to jump in a little bit deeper. We kind of created this to really kind of give a place for the growth-oriented type companies to kind of gather in a peer-oriented situation where they can discuss common challenges and share solutions with other executives in a peer-only environment. Today we have Bill Leake, CEO and co-founder of Apogee Results, and I'll introduce him a little bit more in a minute here. We thank so much our sponsors, who make this actually make it possible for us to do this: Weaver, Dykema, Insperity, and Higher Better.
Does Higher Better not have a logo?
They do. They're just one tier down.
Oh, okay. They need to up their level of engagement so they can have a bigger presence on that page.
Exactly.
Okay.
The next event that CEASAR's having is our mastermind. It'll be November 17th. So be sure to put that on your calendar, 12 to 1:30, and we just kind of dive into things deeper. Everybody has a chance to talk and kind of process things that they're doing and going through. And save the date for the CEASAR Roundtable, which will be Tuesday, December 1st. Speaker to be announced. The agenda today, we'll have a welcome and lightning round introductions. Bill Leake will speak then. He'll be talking about what you need to know to successfully dominate digital marketing from now through post-COVID. If you have any questions, you can put them, please come up with a couple of questions as he speaks that you might like to discuss, and put them in the chat room, and then we'll go through them after he finishes speaking. And then we'll may have some time for a discussion and networking. And the session will be recorded. I'd like to introduce now our Executive Vice President, Susan Vaughn, and she'll tell us a little bit more about ACG.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you again for joining us. I think everyone here has been before. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's so good to see all of you. Excuse me. I think a lot of you are members of ACG, but I want to mention, if you're not, or if you've not looked at the events recently, we've got some great ones coming up. On November 13th, we have our annual Private Equity Two-Step, which is at 9 a.m., I believe. Is that right, Sarah? Mm-hmm. Okay, and then on November 19th, we have a Texas post-election reflection featuring Brett Palmer. That should be very interesting. Everyone stay tuned. And then we also have our fall summit coming up for those of you that are members. Is that, Sarah, can non-members come to the summit as well?
Only if ACG Global has extended an invitation to certain people.
Understand. All right. Well, all right. Well, thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Sarah. And Bill, thank you for sharing with us today. And I'll hand it back to Carrie.
So I'll start the introductions. We introduce give short introductions. I'm Carrie Vanston. I'm the alligator wrangler. I help people up to their neck in alligators. I help them achieve their goals quicker and with less stress and with more fulfillment through energizing their mindsets. That's a little bit about me. Why don't you go, Christine?
Good afternoon. Christine Bryant. I'm the founder and CEO of Gladiator Consulting. We typically assume the role of a fractional chief marketing officer, and my team and I provide resources to executives looking to support growth initiatives for their organizations.
Great. How about Charu?
Number 3 today. Thank you, Carrie. Hey guys, nice meeting you all. It's good to see you all after like every month we meet, so happy. We are in the governance, risk, compliance, information security practice. We have 2 companies we actually call divisions. One is innovative security, InnoSec. Another one is a Secure Written, which is our e-learning platform. And I think we're doing very well. We now clocked almost 16 people. We added 2 more people yesterday. So team is growing, and very happy to say that hey, this is really going great for us. Thank you so much, guys.
David, you want to introduce yourself?
Certainly. Good morning or afternoon now. I'm still in morning mode. My name is David Turpin. I am the principal and a co-founder of an outfit called Peleus Group, which does advisory work for people who are looking for something outside of their comfort zone. Generally, people know their business, but they don't know business generically. If they're looking to sell, bring in family, take another step, they're a little intimidated, to be polite, about the process. So I typically help with those kind of tough, why are you in business and what do you want to accomplish kind of questions. I am also the owner indirectly of Manja Pizza Restaurant and Catering. Not a good time to be in the restaurant and food service business, let me assure you.
Great, thank you. Andy?
Hi, y'all. Andy Fogarasi, entrepreneur, kind of specialist in supply chain, e-commerce, operations. Had a company here in Austin, partstree.com. I founded and grew to about 20 million in sales, sold it. Now I'm doing mentorship, consulting, and currently helping out with a startup company through the SKU program as a mentor. Really enjoying that and connecting with a lot of folks, having fun looking at the next companies I get to help out.
Great. Brad?
Hi, Brad Heath, CEO and founder of Vertex. We do electronic manufacturing services, focusing mostly in aerospace, defense, and government, high-rel industrial, and a little bit of automotive and energy sector as well.
All right, thank you, Brad. Carolyn?
You're on mute, Carolyn.
Yeah, I was eating. Sorry about that.
Sorry, you're the next in line on my screen.
No worries at all. Hi, I'm Carolyn Jenkins, and I do a lot of advising and consulting at the C-level with different organizations. And currently, the majority of my time goes to being Chief Strategy Officer for an RPA company called EPsoft, as well as COO for a cybersecurity company called Veraclave.
Great. Christine?
Wait, me again? I already went.
Oh, I'm sorry. My things moved around. Michael.
Hi, everybody. This is Michael Bashir. I'm the founder of a company called Cobox. And what we do is make it very easy for finance and accounting firms to request due diligence information from their counterparties.
Great, thank you. Susan?
Hello again, everyone. Susan Vaughn. I'm an advisor with Insperity, and Insperity is a national outsourced HR solution. We are end-to-end HR, including payroll, technology, employee benefits, culture strategy, all of the services that fall under the HR umbrella.
Great. Thank you, Susan. Sarah?
Hello all, good to see you again. Sarah Singer with ACG Austin San Antonio. If you have anything that you need to ask, or if you have any trouble while you're on Zoom, just flag me down.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Hopefully Steve will get in eventually. He's still struggling to get in. So I'd like to introduce our speaker today, Bill Leake. He's our own CEASAR person who's been coming. So I really appreciated him stepping in today and giving us some information about e-marketing. Bill and I have known each other, I think we figured either 2006 or 2007. I met him when he was the MC and speaker at Innotech e-marketing summit for several years. And through the years, we've met for coffee 2 or 3 times a year. We've been friends. He's been my mentor. He's been my colleague. So it's really great to have him on board today as a speaker. He is the CEO of Apogee Results. He's also an angel investor. He's a former VC-backed software company president and CMO. He's the author of the book Complete B2B Online Marketing and speaks all over the country on digital marketing. He's also passionate about helping entrepreneurs and succeed. And he is president of the Austin Interactive Marketing Association. He's on the board of Paid Search Association and a mentor for Mass Challenge. And when he's not doing all that, he's busy being a father and homeschool dad to his children. Thank you, Bill. Welcome.
Welcome. No, thanks for coming. Fortunately, I did have some material that was partially ready, so I didn't have to do everything from scratch. Although, you know, part of the interesting thing is seeing what has actually changed in the marketing landscape since we've gone through kind of our COVID fun of this past year. And in the main, what it's really done is it's just moved, it's accelerated trends that were happening anyway. We've got a small group here, so I do have a bunch of slides, probably too many slides. Definitely think of some questions because there are other people here who do a lot of marketing, and I would want us to kind of just roll up our sleeves and think about digital demand gen and digital marketing and problem solve with each other, much like we might do on a smaller CEASAR where it's not kind of a featured speaker. As I'm going through my slides, we're a small enough group here that at any point, feel free to kind of pull the lever on the bus and stop it and say, tell me more about that. Or in my experience, that's not the case, you're an idiot. Or, you know, could you expand on that more? Or what does that look like for B2C? Or seriously, we're a small group here. So let's get this as actionable as possible. And, you know, just treat my slides kind of as a crutch to kind of get us through the next 90 minutes, but we don't need to be slavishly wedded to them by any shape or form. So I will go ahead and move to slides now. Let's see. Okay. All right, so let's just talk generally about digital marketing. I'm always looking for quick wins and easy wins first. We'll talk about some more advanced tactics and strategies that are out there. And then we'll kind of wrap up with a quick discussion. I've been around a while, have done both client side stuff and agency side stuff. For the most part, I've spent the bulk of the last decade and a half running digital marketing consultancies, helping a lot of firms grow. A lot of retailers, pure play online retailers, integrated retailers, a lot of Inc. 500 companies, and a lot of private equity and venture capital backed companies. So kind of a nice diversity of client types out there. Have worked with a lot of companies. These are mainly B2C on this one, not entirely. A lot of B2B and technology companies. Many of the successful companies in Austin for whom being successful digital was a core component of our success, they've either been clients of ours or they've staffed their team by raiding my shop. So one way or another, kind of the successful digital DNA of most companies in Austin that required sort of SEC quality digital football, most of that DNA is something that we've been involved with in some way, shape, or form. One of the things I like to say about digital, because so much of digital is typically either search or social or display oriented, is that it's not your best form of marketing. So generally, marketing practitioners, have one or two tools in their toolkit, and they run around pretending that's the solution for everything. And sometimes they know better and they shouldn't do that. Sometimes they know how to use a hammer. And a lot of things are not necessarily your best form of marketing. Kind of the lowest hanging fruit is typically, who are your existing customers? Who do you have on your email list already? Where can you get viral and referral marketing? Well done PR is often far, far better than paid digital or even earned digital. The challenge is, it's a whole different conversation, but I don't think 98% of the time PR is not done well. But well done PR, you're getting someone else vouching for you with their brand. Kind of like with Google SEO, in a sense, when you show up on the organic listings of Google, there's a little bit more trust associated with it than when you show up with a paid ad. And so it's not the lowest hanging fruit, but it's pretty far down on the tree. It's not generally, the digital side is not the stuff at the top of the tree. I mean, like people ask me, should I do Super Bowl ads? Well, they don't actually ask me that, but the answer is usually, yeah, at some point, after you've done 35 other kinds of marketing first. So it's sort of a, right space, right time. But generally with marketing, you want to be, if you have budget, testing several different types of things for different parts of the customer journey. One of the key level sets in figuring out where digital fits in kind of your scheme is understanding who's your customer and where are they. And like everybody's online now, but historically, digital can often be the lead actor in your demand generation movie if you're marketing to consumers or if you're marketing to small businesses. You're dealing with a very broad swath of people that are going to Google and Bing and Facebook and YouTube and a bunch of other places looking for data. If you're more business to business, digital starts to move to more of a supporting actor role. And if you're marketing to the top 50 money sitter banks or 3-letter government agencies, oftentimes digital almost recedes down to the level of Greek chorus or lubricant. It's still a vital player in the theater, but it's not necessarily the lead actor. And that means you've got to measure it differently and do different kind of attribution for that to work. Now, I used to say no one's ever going to go to Google to look for an MRI machine. And the interesting thing is Google goes back and forth at testing stuff a while ago. People were buying ads, but our hospital is going to choose an MRI machine based on a Google ad. But Google changes things up. Now sometimes you will find in Google Shopping, as if it's almost an Amazon shopping cart, an add to cart, they've changed it around. And when you look for best MRI machine, I mean, they're no longer, it's not necessarily textual ads. It might be their other search engine, their shopping engine. So even things that are going to be a considered purchase, like an automobile, like an MRI, people are going to Google to look for it. They may not buy it there, but they're a very, very esoteric space, heavily B2B, almost no searches a month for it. And so when we were working with these folks, the question was, does digital even matter? There just aren't many searches a month, and we can't even spend $500 a month on Google just covering all the searches because there's so few searches. And so our take on that was, well, those 100 searches are people people don't search for this stuff for fun. You absolutely want to hit those, even if it won't, generate, it's not going to be 50% of your pipeline from a provable perspective, but it's sort of dirt cheap to ensure that you have that coverage. And the interesting thing is it's not just customers and prospective customers who go to Google. There is another subset of Google searchers, and I think they're human too. I mean, some would disagree with me in our current political climate, but there are these things called journalists. and they go to Google. They look for stuff. And so the interesting thing is they're spending just a few hundred paltry bucks a month covering their spaces going, well, this is never going to move the needle from a lead gen perspective. But those ads that got them to the top of Google ahead of a bunch of other people who had much larger marketing budgets, 50 times larger in size and all that, they got found by a Wall Street Journal reporter. And they got an article written in the Wall Street Journal based on their Google ad. You know, this is the kind of thing that most PR firms, you know, would labor 6 months at, you know, 8 to 20K a month retainer and still not get this. And if they got this, they'd like, you know, wow, that was the best 50K you ever spent. Well, these guys got it for, you know, $1,000 and got to talk directly to the reporter, and, you know, the PR person didn't munge it up in the middle. So, you know, there are a lot of good things that can come out of Google beyond simply prospective customers. You know, there are other people who look for these terms. One of the key things in being successful in digital is really kind of laying out what we used to call a funnel, but now is more often described as a customer journey, and kind of laying out how do we think our customers move from awareness to interest to decision, and what is the content that we have for them at every stage of that journey. So where is our prospective customer in that stage of the journey, and do we have the right content for it? Typically, we'd start with stage 3 and get the low-hanging fruit, get the people who are already in buying mode. Those are typically more expensive visitors to attract, and it is a more competitive landscape. So, you know, everybody's going for that last mile, or people already inside the red zone. But the more that we have the budget or ability to have content upstream of that, the more we can separate and differentiate and help the buyer view things through our lensing, through the way we see the industry, through the way we think they should make that decision process. And if you can capture them in stage 1 and stage 2, you can and do it appropriately, you might have been able to shape the decision process to where by the time they get to stage 3, they've already eliminated 80% of your competition because you've trained them in how to buy. And so that's where we kind of think about what's the right content for stage of journey. And, you know, one of the key things, looking at a Google ad buy, or you're looking at a Facebook video campaign, it comes down to like which stage of the journey is that content. And same thing goes for a bunch of Google keywords. Some keywords indicate buying intent, other keywords indicate research intent. And you need to be taking them to different pages and have different metrics and different conversion events based on sort of where they are in the journey. And one of the fails here that we see a lot is, I'll just skip down a couple charts, is that when people look at their marketing budgets, they're typically looking for things like, well, what's our Facebook ROI? Or what's our Google ROI? And the CFO basically has a line item in the budget that gets transferred to the CMO, which is, here's the Google budget, here's the Facebook budget, here's this budget. And that often drives, I mean, sometimes our processes drive suboptimal decisions. Ideally, I might have 3 different parts of my Google budget, stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3, and they have different metrics. I mean, what's the return on investment of awareness spend versus shopping cart spend? And so being able to actually break up the platforms and do our measurement by stage of journey, to me makes a lot more sense. Because if you're only doing it on kind of last touch or last click, you're going to underinvest in things that are earlier journey or earlier funnel. Important to argue about attribution. Attribution is the cost accounting of marketing. Far too many people still do almost entirely last touch. It's what has allowed companies like RetailMe not to be so successful in the affiliate space, where they historically built an entire edifice on what I would call SEO trademark theft. I mean, you were already about to buy, you're sitting there in the shopping cart, and you're confronted with a big empty box that says insert coupon here. And, most people don't want to feel like the village idiot. So you go to, Alt Tab, you open a new browser and you search brand name of the company that I was about to buy from space coupon. And then there goes Retail Me Not, waving their hand, going, I got a coupon, I got a coupon, I got a coupon. Well, they may or may not have a coupon, but then you go to Retail Me Not and you start hunting for one. And then if you find one that actually works, which is about 30% of the time, and we can get into UX discussions there, but unlike honey, which is kind of the next generation of that stuff, you insert it in the box, and all of a sudden there's somebody at Best Buy who gets a bonus, and that person is the affiliate manager. And they try to claim 100% credit for that sale, messing up your attribution with Google, with Facebook, with SEO, with your email campaigns, everything else, because Cotter Cunningham over at Retail Me Not, he hadn't been CEO for a while, but Retail Me Not has just attached a tax to a transaction that was probably going to occur anyway. So attribution is an important thing to talk about. Also in B2B, same case here. A lot of people will come in from search, from trade shows, for other things. They'll sit in the marketing automation database for a couple years, and they aren't really sales ready until some recently minted MBA throws a webinar, and then they tumble down the thing and they claim 100% attributional credit for that lead. But that lead was in the house list, and how was the house list built? So it's important to have this discussion if we're trying to optimize marketing. A couple foundational things that have not changed in COVID. What I call the 3 ABs of digital marketing. One, always be testing. Really try to have a culture of testing. One of the things that I often say, it's amazing how much malpractice is out there, and one of the crack open the Google AdWords hood and see, are they always testing ad copy? I mean, there should always be a winner and there should always be a challenger, and looking for a new winner. It's one of the easiest things in the world to do, and yet a lot of people don't do it. If they're not testing, seriously, I mean, this is why we have our Second Amendment rights. Terminate them and move on. I mean, there's so many other people who can do this stuff, but these little things make a huge difference. Always be measuring what matters. How are you measuring it? Do you actually have the measurement in place to measure what matters? And then always be asking, like, well, what can I learn from this? If I've got an email subject line that's performing better than another email subject line, would that also work well as a title to a video ad? Or would that work well as the way I phrase the ad copy in a Google ad? So be thinking look for the between the cracks wins, where I can cross-pollinate things that seem to be working in one part of digital. How can I move that somewhere else? So some low-hanging digital fruit. This is, this stuff is probably obvious to you, but a lot of people aren't doing it. One, second largest search engine, video. It works in B2B too. This was a video campaign that we did around SAP's major user event, SAP Sapphire, a couple of years ago. Anytime someone was looking for anything around that event, we drove them into YouTube. By the way, it's amazing if you're actually using paid search, not just video ads, but paid search to promote YouTube. Google gives a really high quality score to YouTube. So you pay a lot less to get that click in there. Google likes it when you spend money to bring people to Google. Funny thing, right? But we brought them into this thing. It had a white paper. We'd SEO optimized the video, had YouTube video ads, and we ended up getting thousands of B2B inquiries at a cost per lead of under $25. And that's for B2B. So, I mean, B2C can be even better there. I mean, though the stats say a lot of people are doing video advertising, at least in the B2B world, we see far, far less of it. I'll just go through some stats here these are 2020 stats. Mobile video consumption rises by 100% every year. Back in 2006, over half the video views were already on mobile. And now it's up like 70, 80%. They're viewing videos on a mobile device. Now, the older I get, the more that seems silly to me, because I want the big screen. because the whole eyesight thing. But you know, these kids, they're binge watching TV shows on an iPhone. Like that to me does not sound fun. But you know, but people are consuming the videos. You know, the Facebook exec here, I don't think that's going to be correct, but a recent prediction, you know, that the platform is going to be all video. You know, this one I thought was interesting. 59% of executives say they'd rather watch a video. The interesting thing, number 3, like when you're engaging multiple senses rather than just reading, you actually are more likely to retain the message. So you're hitting them in multiple form factors. Much more likely to share. People want to learn about things on video. A lot of people are doing YouTube or LinkedIn campaigns. A lot of people aren't doing video LinkedIn campaigns. Social video gets shared a lot more. And then the mobile video ads, but now a lot of this is brand advertisers. So it's not so much on the demand gen side. A lot of it's on the awareness, very early journey stuff. But video spend is a huge percentage of what's out there. And then the last one from Buffer, we typically don't think of Facebook for B2B. And there are some challenges using it for B2B because at Facebook, you can sort of identify the right person, but it's often kind of, the analogy I used to use is it's, you know, it's sort of like when you're in deep conversation with a friend when we used to have restaurants and things like that. And then the waiter would come up and the good waiters recognize a good time to approach. The bad waiters do the Batinsky thing and they show up and like just blurt their way in and say, how is everything? It's like, well, it's great till you know, did you not see we were like in a conversation here? So part of the problem with Facebook can be right person, wrong time. So you just have to, you know, we just have to be careful with with campaigns on Facebook that even if we know it's the right person, how do we get their attention, but also do it in a way that's not jarring? Because if they were go there to check up on friends or do something else, and you know, how do we insert ourselves in the conversation without being the annoying Batinsky waiter? A lot of ways that you can do marketing videos. They don't have to be expensive at all these days. Some of it is designing from the ground up when you're doing video content for reuse. For instance, if you're doing a 45-minute webinar, what's your strategy post-webinar to take that back to the chop shop and turn that also into 10 different 2-minute nuggets of content, each of which is video optimized for SEO and potentially integrated with other campaigns. So if you're shooting video, be thinking like, how do I build it for reuse? And it really doesn't have to be expensive these days. Another piece of low-hanging fruit that's out there is there's this thing called Bing. It actually has about, you know, depending on the stats, I've seen anywhere between 23 to 32% desktop share of search. Part of that is because Microsoft kind of lost when it came to mobile. Their presence on mobile devices is anemic. But if you're looking at the value of an eyeball, desktop eyeballs are typically worth 2 to 3 times mobile eyeballs. So having, you know, 25, 30% share of desktop is non-trivial. And Bing tends to be a little bit richer, a little bit poorer, a little bit more female, and it has a cluster of tech-savvy Microsoft fan people, but it's also got a cluster of people who didn't know how to take Bing off as a default search engine. So you've got a little bit upper middle class and beyond skew, and you've got a little bit of a subprime skew. So the demographics are slightly different than Google. It tends to be about the same quality though of traffic, and tends to be about 25, 30% cheaper doing an ad buy. And it amazes me how few people, particularly if you have limited budget, sometimes you go out to Google and it is a meat grinder, and it's hyper competitive environment. You can sometimes go out to Bing and test some things and play some, like, you know, Texas State football before you have to go play Alabama football. You know, so you can play some stuff here and figure it out on smaller budget, and it's definitely worth trying for a lot of folks. Some things that we see that are working out there as well. If your core campaigns are well optimized, think about being in multiple places, just like Procter & Gamble tries to run the table at detergent and toothpaste at Walmart. You could do that with Google. A client of ours called ShipStation, they're owned by Stamps.com. Stamps.com has purchased a bunch of players in the space, and they've left them alone as standalone brands. And they're running a bunch of campaigns. And so if you're out there looking for shipping software, well, they're capturing 3 of the 4 top ads. Who are you going to buy from? Ultimately, you're probably going to buy the detergent from these guys because they've crowded all their competitors out. So that's an advanced strategy, but be thinking about, you know, can I have an unfair share of the Google goodness? And you can do that if you market through channels, if you have partners. There are multiple ways of getting there beyond, you know, being a publicly traded company running multiple brands that still look like standalone legal entities, even though they are rebranding them all under one now. And the good news, all this part of Stamps.com is headquartered in Austin. It's like huge 9-figure Austin tech success story that most people have never heard of. You can also kind of cheat. You can also run the table sometimes with search engine optimization just on the core listings, on the organic listings. You have different types of documents and things of that nature. So be looking at trying to do that where you can. One caveat on SEO is if you were counting on SEO to be your core business driver, like you know, we did all the foundational work for Dan Graham's company Build a Sign back in the day, and you know, one of the key terms for them that drove a lot of their income was custom signs. And here they are at the bottom of page 1 of custom signs, or just barely above the fold, not the bottom page 1, because Google puts ads on top. And now that Google moved all the ads from the right-hand side to on top a couple years ago, they also keep playing around with form factors to make it more and more confusing about what's an ad and what's not. So even the #1 listing in SEO can be a challenge now because you're here just barely above the fold. Then they put the map in, and there's, you know, an out-of-state group that also competes with Build a Sign that is pretty world-class at SEO. It's called Vistaprint. They're #2 in SEO. But are you going to find them? Because they're here down on the bottom of the page. So given all the things that Google and others have going on, sometimes SEO is more of a challenge now. And, you know, people used to be happy with a 3rd or 5th place ranking. But now with all this stuff going on, the ads, the other search engines, could be a shopping engine, could be maps in this case, sometimes the #2 listing is not all that in a bag of chips anymore, and particularly not if you're on a mobile device. Who goes to page 2 of Google on a desktop, let alone a mobile device? So the mobile device has made top search engine rankings even more important because people may not scroll to 5, 6, or 7, particularly if there are other engines being pulled up in there. And this was actually kind of an interesting thing. We helped HomeAway a few years ago because once Google started putting the maps in there, HomeAway had built some automated ranking checkers, and they're going, we don't understand. Our traffic is like fallen by 30% and our rankings are still all there. And we had to say, well, you know, there's this thing here called the map, and it's now in there between where, you know, before your natural listings. So they had to kind of re-architect a bunch of stuff for their automated checkers. But so SEO does have its challenges. Another thing I'm a big fan of is if you get earned media wins, or a partner's talking about you, or there's somewhere that you live off of your website, think about promoting that with a paid digital campaign. And it's an interesting dichotomy out there because ad agencies understand paid media, but they sort of understand paid media promoting the content they build you to create, because they got a bunch of failed artists running around the ad agencies that think they should have been Jackson Pollock and they weren't, and now they're grumbling about being commercial artists because they've kind of sold out. But they look to a client and think, oh, that's a patron. It's like, no, it's a different word. Client and patron have no, you know, linguistic connection. but they look to you guys to fund their art. And so they understand paid media. PR firms, and there's some exceptions, but a lot of PR firms turn up their nose at paid media and go, oh, well, if you're doing paid media, it's because you weren't good enough to get the earned media, and earned media is more credible. And I'm just an old Boy Scout. I mean, I look at earned media and say, yeah, it's a much more credible. That's a spark. Who brought the gasoline? And then you take the paid media and you pour it on the earned media, and then you have all kinds of goodness. But you look for what are the most credible wins out there that you can promote. And it doesn't have to be your own content. It's much more credible if it's an influencer. I mean, you may have paid the influencer, but if you're promoting other people's voices talking about you, it's far more credible than you talking about yourself. And this is one of the areas that PR and other forms of digital are starting to converge. I won't get into a lot of effort here, but this one's talking more about the domain authority or backlinking kind of stuff, where PR folks used to talk to like the top 50, and SEO folks used to talk to like the real bottom feeders of websites. And a lot of the magic now, both from a credibility perspective and some natural traffic, but also from a Google giving you full faith and credit for links perspective, is now more kind of in the middle of that pyramid. That's made life a lot harder for a lot of PR firms, because they're having to work with hundreds and hundreds of people now, not just dozens, and has meant that the few SEO firms that actually know how to do link building that works now have had to up their game, because they can't just be running around, like sending spams out saying, will you link to me? Because that just doesn't work. One of the things that I see far too often in digital marketing is a skewed ratio of creating content versus promoting content. Most of the people out there that I see in the marketing space, particularly the ones selling to smaller companies, it's a little different when you get in the enterprise space, but they're graphic design firms, they're website building shops, they pretend to be the music man and do all things in marketing, whether they're one person or 50. They're first chair quality in the orchestra at every instrument, but really a lot of them are very project focused, and then they kind of do the ongoing digital marketing as a leave behind. But if you have 100K, they'll magically spend 80 to 85K on the website and have only 15K left over to promote it. And, you can scale these up by an order of magnitude or down by an order of magnitude. But like, if I got a 10K budget, I probably really want to be thinking of how do I spend 2K on the content and 8K on the promotion. And too much of my industry, in my opinion, just has it backwards. And then so you get this really nice Lamborghini sitting in your driveway, but you got no money for gas and no money to actually take it out and spin it. So got to be mindful of that balancing effort. Again, PR and SEO are all kind of blending in some ways. Sadly, few SEO professionals know enough about PR, and every PR person, because they're really good at telling you what you want to hear. Most of them will say they do SEO, but really they're just trying to get articles, and maybe it links to you, maybe it doesn't, and they don't know how to get it linked properly. Well, one of the things that hopefully COVID is breaking us away from is far too many of us have still, I think, a myopic focus on our website as the battleship that we want our digital campaigns to revolve around. And, people are kind of everywhere these days. So I don't advise that. I think we're more dealing with a flotilla of small craft. The website can still be the sun in the solar system or Jupiter with a bunch of moons, but a lot of the victories occur out there in the moons, and thinking through where do I want the content to live, and where is it most credibly going to live. And, it can live in social media sites. It can live on partner sites. If you have a channel, press and PR, there are, review sites, some of which are paid. microsites out there, but be thinking of a more diversified strategy, kind of overwhelming people with rubber rafts or with drones rather than like putting it all in an aircraft carrier. Think about how you can integrate, again, your paid and your earned content. If you get a press win and it lives on a third-party site, promote the site. We had a client that got sort of the dream lazy journalist PR win, where they took our press release and the journalist just put their name on it and didn't change much and kind of put an article, and it was actually in Network Security Magazine. And for 3 years on their Gartner keyword category, I was still driving phone calls to clients that I just read about you in the magazine or the online version of the magazine. But it was credible because it was them. There's this magazine called CFO out there. Many of these publishers have digital lead gen platforms. And you could buy lead gen programs from them. They're really not much good at getting you leads, but I still think it's worth testing it for a couple reasons. One, you can use CFO.com as the destination URL in your campaigns, and that's going to have huge credibility because the customer doesn't necessarily realize it's play to play. They just think this is what CFO has to say about the space. And yeah, they may charge you 10 to 15 bucks per lead. And it seems kind of weird, like, why am I spending money on top of money I'm spending with them to do this? But if your native campaigns cost you 50 to 100 bucks per lead, which is not unusual in B2B, sometimes as much as 300 or 1200, adding an extra 15 buck tax or 25 buck tax to have a better destination URL and to be able to do that ShipStation like stuff of like having 2 different campaigns on Google, one that's going to your landing pages, but one that you're laundering through CFO, it is probably worth testing at the very least. If you're trying to avoid the hyper competitive keywords out there, and this is becoming actually more of a thing now as people are struggling with what does the event world look like now that physical events are temporarily taking a hiatus. There is a huge set of keyword inventory out there about people looking for educational terms that used to revolve around event names. Salesforce has a big conference called Dreamforce. You can see once a year it spikes. Those search terms are going down a little bit now because the physical events aren't happening, but people still want to know, well, what are they doing in lieu of that event? And so if these are things that your business either might have exhibited at, or it's too expensive to exhibit at, but it's something that you know is a watering hole for people that you would like to have a dialogue with, think of the cluster of events that appeals to your demographic and consider having digital campaigns. This is one from a couple of years ago, but a trade show, publishers convention, web publishers convention in our space. And a lot of times it's pretty cheap to float above the entire set of search results. And if you're going to the show, you could offer them a discount code, have them come to your landing page, and then retarget them for months. Retarget them with see us in booth 396, see us in booth 96, or register now and get a double entry for our Google Home Lotto, whatever it is. But think about if you have an event budget, whether it's virtual or physical. Again, think about how are you going to digitally promote that. And some of this is leaning into other events. Like if you're putting up a webinar and you're in the fintech space, and a lot of these fintech events are shut down, you might still want to buy their names and say, hey, the stuff you would have learned here, you can now learn in our webinar. And it's a way of kind of capturing traffic that might otherwise be 5 times more expensive if you were buying the Gartner or Forrester keyword terms. Really kind of think of the integration of data. How do you like figure out an expression of interest on the website? Like which company is it? Well, how, does that mean that I now need to have people outbounding or doing LinkedIn campaigns to the 10 people at that company who are likely to be ones interested in my product? Like if someone hits your website and you're able to see, oh, It was from this geography at IBM. Well, who in that geography at IBM would be likely interested in your product? And you can have then outbound campaigns trying to target them. One of the other things that you can do digitally is as you're building lists, you can upload them into platforms. You can upload them into LinkedIn and Google and Facebook and Twitter, see what kind of audience match you can get on that. And see if you can display, it's funny, there's this whole thing in B2B that they've talked about the last few years called account-based marketing, because you have to change the labels every few years. Really all that means is just retargeting to a list. And one of the things that you can still do digitally pretty nicely is you can buy lists and you can upload them into things like Facebook and see, can I get a match? It generally isn't good for me to buy a list and then send the list email. That's going to hurt my sender score. There are going to be a lot of red flags. That's been kind of a known no-no for a long time. But I could purchase a list that has emails and see what kind of matches I'm getting on the digital platforms and serve them ads. I can take the people that are in my CRM database, but not yet in, or my marketing automation database, but not yet in Salesforce or my CRM, and serve them a different set of ads. I can take the people that are in my prospect pipeline and based on stage of funnel, serve them different ads. I can take my existing customers and serve them ads geared at flipping the funnel and turning them into references. It's really distressing how few people do that. And it's a huge win, because guess what? Anyone here have screen time that's gone down in the last year? All of our people are spending more and more time on the screen. Kind of have the attribution so you can optimize based on, which rats actually are able to make it through the maze and find the cheese and do what you want, and like get more of those in. The people are just looky-loos and never going to buy the house and at the top of the funnel, but never move down. Like, figure out what about your funnel's broken, but also bring fewer of those in until you fix that. And try to optimize as close to the revenue event as you can. And actually for e-com retailers, I like to go beyond the revenue event and look at what the catalogers used to call an RFM sort and look at rebuy behavior and focus on getting the customers that have the greatest expected customer lifetime value. If someone's just looking for cheap golf balls, that might be different than if you're coming in and getting golf clubs. Kind of figure out like who's likely to be a return buyer or a reference customer or a low cost to serve customer and get more of those. This is, I talked a little bit about this in the last point. The two kind of blend together actually, but really think about where people are by stage of journey and serve them ads that fit that, rather than just generic retargeting ads that, actually, a generic retargeting ad is better than no retargeting ads. So start with that. But then the next stage on that is figure out where they are in the journey and serve them ads based on that. It's remarkable sometimes how this falls through the cracks. In a lot of B2B cases, the company may be on, let's say, WordPress for their main website, but they might also use a Marketo or Infusionsoft. And they might build all their landing page for their email campaigns in Marketo. And the Marketo person might be sitting in one cube, the marketing automation person. The digital display ads person might be sitting in the cube next door. And, pre-COVID, they would sit in the cube and they might go out to lunch together every day. The marketing automation person's running a webinar campaign, and guess what? There are no remarketing tags on the Marketo landing pages. The remarketing tags are only on WordPress. So a lot of times they're not even tags there. If you have the remarketing tags there, you're generally getting generic remarketing. You're not getting webinar focused remarketing. So if you send out a marketing campaign and each click-through link, you got 3 or 4 click-through links, it's probably going to a different landing page. Part of ordering up that campaign is ordering graphics for display remarketing that fit that campaign. So I can remind them that there's a webinar coming. I can, once the webinars come, I can remind them, hey, if you missed it or you want to see it again, it's on demand located over here and really easy to share. So change up that messaging, but have it fit the stage of journey. Yeah, just keep arguing about attribution. You're never going to get it right, but the important thing is to have the conversation. And sadly, a lot of times the answer is it depends. I mean, what works for someone may not work for someone else. There are multiple ways to get from Austin to Boston. What's the best way? Well, I don't know. How fast do you want to get there? How much money do you have to spend? Do you enjoy the scenic routes? Do you want the interstate? Do you want to hop in an airplane? And we're all studying this. I've been studying it a distressingly long time, and I still live in mortal fear that someone will pop up and say, well, it hasn't worked that way for the last 3 weeks. What's your problem? Google moved it. It's over here now. And then, for anyone in ACG or, in the Austin ecosystem, I'm more than happy to have my team kind of look under the hood and kind of give you some actionable things that could make your marketing campaigns better. I mean, a lot of this stuff is stuff that business owners can do themselves. You don't always have to have a fancy agency to do a bunch of this stuff. And actually, if the agency is too fancy, you're probably not going to be an important client to them unless you're spending tens of thousands a month. So somewhere in there is the right Goldilocks size. So I should let you guys talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Listen, I wanted to thank you so much. That was very interesting. I'd love to have Steve Eisen introduce himself. He came on, he had trouble getting on, and now he is, has he left? Oh, shoot, he's left. Anyway, he's
sorry
the
about that.
CEO from Rebecca Creek Distribution out of San Antonio. What else? Be sure to put your contact information in the chat. The people who are actually members of ACG get a list of all of the people who registered. The people who aren't ACG members, we put all of our information into the chat so that everybody can get contact each other if they so wish. So who has questions for Bill? Everybody can just unmute themselves so we can have a conversation.
I'll jump in and be first.
Go ahead.
Hey, Bill, quick question for you, Andy.
Yeah.
I'm going to go through just go through a little bit of history and oversimplify things just a little bit and then hit my question. Back at the turn of this century, you had a product to sell, you needed to get a website, and you put your product up on your website and tried to advertise SEO on Google. And that was the big thing. The fight was for SEO and who was at the top of the list. And then with your AdWords and all such. Google then started ranking you based on the content on your website as you tried to sell your product. And the better your content, generally organically, the better your ranking. So then companies started adding a lot of content, and instead of just focusing on a product, started kind of focusing on a more brand approach and content that's relevant for their community so that they can get a higher ranking. Then we jump into, let's say 2010, and suddenly we have Facebook, Twitter, and all of these social media places. And now instead of sitting on Google waiting for someone to type in a keyword that was relevant to you, you could now segment, match, and target people on social media and put ads in front of them for your stuff. Now, proactively marketing. Now, this has become highly competitive as you're continuing to try to push ads at them and grab their attention and chase them around the electronic space. So I'm curious, I'm just looking back, content seems to be the thing, but you're continuing to push ads, paying lots of money at your customers, and potentially they're tired of seeing your ads. And here comes the question. Have you seen companies now start to focus, instead of just pushing product and brand ads, creating some simple one-page content of really good educational or entertainment stuff, almost becoming a little bit of a media company as opposed to a product or brand company that happens to sell a really good product based on what that entertainment and education is. And that little one pager goes out every week to your people, and they really want to see it because it has some relevant content in it, as opposed to just passing it by. So a switch from now, instead of just products several, 20 years ago, to brand, to now pushing the content forward that's relevant to help push your product. Anything you're seeing in that?
I am, and there's some examples that all of you are probably familiar with. And I've seen publishers get into e-com. The Chive, locally based, the Chive would be an example of that, where they started with as a publisher, and then they were ad supported, but then they got heavily into merch as well, and it had merchandise. There are companies out there like Dollar Shave Club that were built almost entirely, or the Poo-Pourri Woman, that were built almost entirely on entertaining commercials. The sites that kind of have a deal of the day or a deal of the week or month also kind of have, it can be really hard to do that well, because the skills of being a retailer are different than the skills of being a publisher. So where I see more of that going on now is where people are looking at sort of what I would call the next generation, of affiliate marketing, which is well done influencer marketing. The historically affiliate marketing was much more like a retail me not, where you got a kind of a creepy guy on the corner saying, I got a coupon, I got a coupon, I got a coupon, and it's all just coupons and deals, and versus credibility and influencers. So I'm seeing that happen. That being said, people's attention span is dwindling, and people want to see moving, talking, colorized pictures. I call them talkies. That's my new word for them. But it's and they want to consume it on this. So I think what you're talking about, Andy, becomes something of an advanced strategy if you haven't covered the bases first. And that's having a pretty clean website experience, or it's increasing the pain. When you look at what makes people buy online, there are some actually really ugly websites out there that have world-beating conversion rates. And so when you're looking at what to imitate, I would counsel also understanding how is your product different than theirs. Like historically, when we used to see people put out top converting websites, 1-800-Flowers and Teleflora were always near the top of it. But they were ugly websites. But they got a 25% conversion rate. And why is that? Well, someone's really mad at me and I got to get them something really fast, or, oh crud, I forgot my mom's birthday, or something. It typically males. It was typically males doing they weren't really paying attention to price or anything. It's just, I got to get this out the door. And these were not websites you'd want to emulate if you were selling anything else. We had a client once that had discount cards pre-Obamacare for people that were too rich for Medicaid, but too poor for insurance. So kind of in that gap. And apparently when you search for pregnant, no insurance, it doesn't matter what barriers are between you and the cheese on that website, you are going to find it. Because you are just in such panic and pain. So it's also understanding kind of where you fit in the ecosystem, and are you a luxury item? Are you a necessity? Where's the rest of the competitive intensity? But generally, yeah, the same hooks that get people coming back for soap operas, the same hooks that get people in the PR things. The humor hook, the urgency hook, the controversy hook. Controversy is a challenging one for business. Generally, it's better to shy away from it, but there are some exceptions. And we're seeing that now where some businesses actually have figured out their demographic, and they are doing what used to be the third rail, and they are choosing sides in the great divide in America. Like Nike knows who their customers are. The people who say, well, I'm not going to buy Nike because of Colin Kaepernick. And you say, well, they weren't buying a lot of Nike anyway. So some of it is Hobby Lobby and Chick-fil-A have probably less willingly, but they've definitely shed some of their market by the choices that they make. So I do think, Andy, we need to get better. It's not just putting out speeds and feeds, but I still think in most cases, for most businesses, the truly competing against people whose DNA is being a publisher or DNA is being the narcissistic vocalist looking for the mic as an Instagram influencer, those are tough things to pull to add to your core competencies as most companies. So oftentimes still, I think the right answer is to partner with those people, give them some commissions or some VIG or some product samples and kind of lean into people and always look at say, well, can we get better and better at that? But it's hard to do multiple things well. And being a publisher and being a manufacturer and being a retailer, those are three very different things. And there are some people who pull it all off and have an integrated product line, but and some manufacturers like Yeti Cooler, once they've established their brand and they've gone through distro channels, have a fairly large direct-to-consumer channel as well. Kendra Scott, kind of a similar thing, but it's for businesses that aren't already of a certain size and scale, unless they're really lucky or they really do have a compelling narrative, like Dollar Shave Club or the Poo-Pourri thing, which it's hard to have multiple rabbits out of the hat like that, though. Like Dollar Shave Club, the first one was great, had 2 or 3 more videos. What do they do now? So I was very long-winded on that. I do think that since the early days of the internet, the content that worked then is certainly not going to get you there now. I mean, both consumers have higher expectations, but Google also does. So Google's, old and cruddy content is not going to rank well on Google.
Thank you, Bill, and thanks for the question, Andy. If anyone else has any more questions, I put Bill's email up there. You can call him or email him or whatever. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I did want to talk about a couple of things. One thing is we have a new Facebook. You can find that by looking up ACG CEASAR, and then I will say, yes, you can join. I'll also try to make some invitations for that. We are growing this organically. So please, if you have people that are C-suiters or CEOs or business owners that you think really belong in our group and you want them in the group, please feel free to invite them. And you can also reach out to Sarah and me, and we can put them on the list, the invite list too. The dates, November 17th is our mastermind. Love for you to come. It's several of us, usually 6 to 8 people, maybe 9 at the most. And we each have about 10 minutes to just kind of talk about what's going on and help each other process what's going on in our businesses and our lives. And then December 1st will be our next roundtable. I think I've got the women from SKU at Andy's recommendation. So I'm still confirming that. And then we have, I'm pretty sure we have somebody for January, and then February we have Mason Arnold is going to be our speaker. And I think the month after, Cole Harmison. So anyway, we have some interesting people coming up, but love for you to come to that one in December. So be sure to put this, it's the first week is the roundtable with a speaker, and then the third week is the mastermind, unless something weird comes up. But otherwise, that's kind of our schedule. So put that on your schedule. And I guess we're right about at the end here. Does anybody have any anything quick to say before we end? Okay, well, then did you say something? Did someone say something?
This is Michael. I just want to say thank you for setting this up, and Bill, this was really helpful. So thank you for your time.
Thanks. Well, you're welcome. Thank you for coming.
And welcome, Michael. It's nice to have you. You're a new face, and we love new faces. So hopefully I'll see you on, and thank you, Susan and Sarah, too, for helping out on this, and Bill. So I'll see you on November 17th or December 1st. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you so much.